Death Note, the anime version of Breaking Bad, essentially, on par with Breaking Bad. The number one rated, pretty much in most people's minds, anime. This piece of fiction has captured the minds of so many, and at the same time, something happened, right? Something happens halfway through the anime that most people will say it renders it unwatchable. They refuse to watch it past that point. They say it's the worst thing ever, the worst artistic decision, and in some ways I can see their point, okay? I'm not just going to argue against that that thing that happens. If you don't know what happens, just go and watch it for yourself. Click off this video. Final warning. Click off this video and go watch Death Note because the story is amazing. It's that amazing that I showed it to my mom. I showed it to my mom and we watched it together and she was so impressed. She was so impressed by it. She was so hooked that she watched it from beginning to end. But something happens in the 25th episode. Okay, are you ready? You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about, right? The character, L, the main detective, drops off the face of the earth. He is no more. And what's more, he is replaced basically by an inferior version of himself. What were the creators thinking when they did that? That's insane. That is insane. You never do that in writing. You never do that in storytelling. You never ever take an interesting character halfway through the story when the intention is the highest and you take it and you remove them and then you replace them with a different character. Every single series that has done that has failed. It's terrible. And this is Light versus Nier. Okay, Nier is so hated. And I see the point, right? I see why, because he's just the same detective essentially. He's a copy of him, but just done worse. He's a kid. He's a kid, and you cannot really relate to this kid. He's like 8 years old. He's like 8 or 10 years old. He's just a little child. Why? Why would you keep watching after that? Why would you keep watching that? It is just unwatchable. It becomes boring. That entire cat and mouse game that they had, L and Kira, is just completely gone out the window anymore. You don't need to watch past that point. And a lot of people gave up. They were frustrated, they were annoyed, they complained about it so much to the point where you get alternative fan made endings. They just, some people just stopped watching it altogether. That's how much this impacted people, including my mom. But I, on the other hand, when I watched it, I actually liked this. I liked the way the story went. I enjoyed it and I understood what they were doing and what they were aiming for. Okay, now the thing about L is that he is just eating all the time. He's eating all the time. He's eating food and cookies and whatever and candy. He just cannot stop eating. At a core point, if you were to analyze him, he is a very gluttonous character. He doesn't seem that way on the outside, but he is actually a symbol of gluttony. He eats all the time. And that is something that is ends up biting him. Okay, it ends up biting him and it basically destroys him in the end. Now, L, I would say, is inspired by characters like Sherlock Holmes or Poirot. It's very obvious. Okay, both of these characters are actually arrogant on the inside. Poirot actually tells Hastings that he has a lard for a brain. That's literally what he tells him in one of the final episodes. So they insult people, they look down on people on the inside, they manipulate, and they're very arrogant. And it is a case of narcissism. Okay, they're very narcissistic characters on the inside. How do we know this? L at one point tells Kira, the murderer, he tells him, I am also someone who hates to lose. Okay, he knows that he's very full of himself. And that is why he relates so much to the villain. That's why he's trying to catch him so hard, because he relates to him. He's like a mirror to his own identity. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so infatuated with him. Now, Nier, on the other hand, when he comes in, The problem is that the story is so rushed from the manga, you don't even know who this guy is. He's just like a random character when he appears. Like, what are you doing in the story, bro? Go away. You don't know who he is, he's not fleshed out, and he's just very brief. For the amount of impact that he has on the story, he's just so brief. You don't know what the hell he's supposed to be doing. Okay, so when that happens, when Nier comes in, he is the total polar opposite. He doesn't need anything. Like you don't really see him eating much. That's one of the things, okay? That's one of the things. But another thing is that he is just not infatuated with Kira at all. He just doesn't care. He is a lot more efficient due to the fact that he has literally zero empathy for Light. He just does not care. He does not view him as his own mirror. He just categorizes him as a murderer, insane psychopath, and he does not care to interact with him at all. In fact, he is very surgical. That's why he wears all these white clothes. That's not a symbol of innocence. That's not a symbol of innocence at all. That is surgical precision and wanting to stay as far away from the action as possible. He isolates himself from all the action on purpose. That's his strategy. And that's what makes him so much more interesting. Well, he's like on par with L. He just does not deserve all the hate that he gets. He absolutely does not deserve to be hated because he's just as interesting, if not more. Okay, I actually liked him more. Yes, very controversial, but I like this character a lot more than L, which is strange to say, right? Because in a lot of other ways, he is not as good as L is. Like objectively, he's not as good because L had to literally prove magic in a court of law. How do you do that? At some point, I'm sure that he basically knew that it's unprovable, and that's why he started having so much fun with his case. And in the end, he lost because there's just no way. You just start doing random stuff and rage baiting the guy you're trying to catch. That's the only thing that you can do at that point. Okay, so what Nier did was on the basis of everything that was done before in the case. That's how he managed to catch Mikami in the end, by swapping the textbooks and knowing what he was about to do. And that's how he ended up catching him, because of everything that had been done before that. And by the way, Mello was kind of like his brother from the orphanage in a way. He helps him do that. Okay, so he would never have been able to do that on his own. So is he a flawed character? Yes. Is he weak in some ways? Absolutely. More inexperienced? Yes. And he has his own pitfalls, right? You see him at the continuation of Death Note, and this guy looks completely broken. Okay, he is unkempt, he is skinny, frail, broken. He is just stuck in his own childhood. Like that same room where he was solving the crime, he just stayed there. It's very obvious that he is very badly adjusted. Like he's a badly adjusted individual who did not manage to adjust in a way. Now L is just wearing his pajamas as well, but he's a little more like, from what you could see his adult version compared to the Nier adult version, he was in a way a little bit more happy, perhaps more entertained at least. You could tell that. Now Nier is a lot more objective. He's surgical in everything that he does. He has zero empathy, zero feelings, but at the same time, he looks like L in a lot of other ways. Okay, um, he literally tells Kira, "You're just a murderer to me." He does not care, and for that reason, because of his objectivity, because of the fact that he is so precise and he knows what he's doing, and he is so strategic in many ways. He does not let his empathy and his entertainment get in the way. He's not even entertained by this case. He's so above it, and that's what makes him so interesting. That's what makes him very interesting. And by the way, something that happens in the continuation of Death Note is that he knows when a battle is just lost, and he says, "I cannot solve this case. Quit bothering me." and he says no and he rejects it. That is very important. Like knowing when you're about to lose, knowing where like something is not realistic for it to happen, that your success rate is going to go down. You're about to fumble it. And maybe if L knew that, he could have saved his life, you know? So he could have backed away. So many things that could have happened, but plot armor, story. And the story is flawed. Don't get me wrong. Like, after the 25th episode, there was stuff happening that I was watching, and I've watched it several times, and it's very difficult to understand what they're actually going for. Like, what's happening? There's scene after scene after scene happening over and over and over, and when that happens, like, you don't fully see the connection. It's kind of like Game of Thrones in the final seasons. There's stuff happening with zero context, and that's like a big problem with the story. So that's why I'm gonna say that Nier didn't fail Death Note. The Death Note writers kind of failed Nier, and he's a way better character than the story allowed him to be. And what's interesting is that even though L was inspired from all these like Sherlock Holmes, Poirot type of detectives, okay, Nier is not. So he's like his own thing. He's not particularly arrogant, narcissistic, or anything like that. He's just like super boring and just serious all the time. Zero humor, zero irony, zero any of that. Yes, he can fake. Yes, he can manipulate the guy he's trying to catch, and he does that. But at the same time, you know, all that wit is not there, which, in my opinion, is a lot more compelling. It's a lot more show don't tell, if you know what I mean, So yeah. Sorry about this one, guys, but Nier better than L.